got to that point where I had it up to here. And it was either I move forward or just let it go. Like they're having such an emotional discussion about a fictional character on a fictional show that's causing them to have arguments. And when you think about the time that they're spending talking about this stuff, that they're talking about it, tweeting about it, fixating on it, and life passing by.
Okay, so I'll just start with the notes that I got around you. So Javan is a mentor, environmentalist, and singer-songwriter who has spent over a decade guiding young people to overcome limiting beliefs and step into leadership. His new book, From Stuck to Unstoppable, shares actionable lessons on self-discipline, purpose, and mindset shifts, particularly aligning with your show. He'd love to come on and talk about how to break through fear and uncertainty, the power of mentorship in personal growth, and steps to go from feeling stuck to creating real change.
Yes.
And I also went on your website and looked a couple of the blog posts, Rebuilding After Failure and From Stuck to Unstoppable, which is obviously the title of your book. Could I ask, so what is your story? What's your journey that kind of led you to learn this kind of overcoming hardship piece?
Well, first, I didn't know it was hardship. I didn't know I was walking through life oblivious. I would say that I was creating by default. I would say that, I am obviously blessed. I have a lot to be thankful for. I grew up on a small island in the Bahamas, and, people would say, hey, you grew up in paradise. Like, what do you have to feel stuck about? You can go outside to the beach, but, sometimes when it's so readily available, we take it for granted. So I walk outside and yes, I live like 2 minutes away from the beach. Actually, the beach is at the back of my property. And so I walk to the beach and I sit down and I'm like, oh, so stressful, but I mean, it's crazy to say that, to others. It'd be like, are you nuts? Like you live on the beach, bro. Like you shouldn't have anything to complain about. But admittedly, I would say that I grew up as the youngest child. And so I had youngest child syndrome. So I depended on all of my older siblings to really like take care of me, or they would be like, oh, if he doesn't do it, I'll just go and do it. So that's number one. Number two, I had a lack of focus. So I was all over the place and not really had a focus or defined pathway. So I was a jack of all trades and a master of none. So I got mixed results anytime I did something. That's number two. Number three, because I didn't have like a focused mindset, I feel an operating by default, which means that I felt like I was pulling in from the environment. If someone comes to me on my left hand and says, hey, let's go and do this. Okay. Someone comes to me on my right and they, oh, let's go do this. Okay. And so then I experienced this, I wasn't really centered. And so I'd be pulled in 10 different directions and stress over which direction I should take. So I would say like that was the essence of being stuck for me. Paralyzed when it comes to making a decision. Paralyzed when it comes to even knowing how I felt about certain situations. So even if there was like tumultuous situations or a death in the family or a death, something happening, I wouldn't know how to feel. And so I would be frozen and don't know how to move forward. So that in essence, that was the feeling stuck for me. So in the midst of paradise, here's this young black guy feeling stuck. And when you're stuck, you really don't see possibilities. You don't see opportunities. You don't have the mindset for it. Through operating in default, I felt stuck. I felt like I wasn't moving anywhere, and the years are passing. And I'm watching my peers grow and develop and having families and progressing, having some sort of movement. And here I am feeling stuck, So to get my mind off of that, I really started like, okay, what do I love to do? One of those directions that I was pulled in was the environmental direction. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'll just go, whatever. And so I went that way and it sparked something in me. it made me feel like I have something to offer in this direction. And I started like working with children, even more so, being in the environment, being outside, which helped me to block off all of these avenues or all of this input that was coming in from the outside. And I started to kind of focus in a certain direction. So 13 years later, working with our youth program, working with one-on-one and all of these different personalities, it helped me to say, like, wow, I really like this avenue. I really like this, and so working with them, giving of myself, being of service to others helped me to realize something about myself. So here I am teaching them leadership, and all of the things that I'm teaching them, it's like I'm talking to myself. Here I am teaching them, okay, a good leader is focused. A good leader knows like where his motivation comes from, knowing your values. And I'm teaching this. And it just hit me like a ton of bricks last summer. It's like, I could write about this. I could write about this. I could create my own blueprint. And so I started doing that. And through creating my own blueprint, I realized like, oh my God, like I could write a book. So that weekend, I felt like all of those years of indecision and feeling stuck just poured out of me. And I wrote and I wrote and I wrote and I wrote. I walked away from it with a smirk, like, I'm doing this. And I went back to it, kept refining, kept refining, kept refining, kept refining. And then I tested it out on our interns because I had like at this particular point last year, I had about 10 interns. And so I went through some of the exercises that I had in my book with them because here's students who are on the cusp of change. Some of them were graduating from high school. Some of them were in college and they didn't know what they wanted to do, what direction they wanted to go in. And so I started doing these exercises just to help them to bring their mind back to center. And I told them like, hey, you will have adults coming to you. You will have different people coming to you and telling you, oh, you should do this. You should study this. You should go in this direction. You should go in this direction or that direction. But what do you want to do? And so I
Hmm.
started to really break it down to get to the core of who they were and what they wanted to accomplish right now in their life and to be in this moment. And they started writing and they started like putting it down on paper. And one of the exercises that I really like is if you had a magic wand right now you have a magic wand and any one of your goals that you wrote down or that you should have written down, if you could make it just manifest at the swish of this wand, which goal would that be? And if you could, off the top of your head, just without thinking about it, without weighing pros and cons, say this goal, then that's the one you should be working on,
Hmm.
And so I did all of these exercises with them and they started to realize like, oh, my mom wanted me to be an accountant, but through this exercise, what I'm writing down, I really like this direction. And I said, well, you should go in the direction that gives you the most, that gives you goosebumps, the direction that
Hmm.
makes you feel excited, because you will want to go to the next step. You will want to wake up every day and do something different. And so as I'm teaching them, I feel like this phantom behind me just slapping me in the back of the head, like, you're talking to yourself. So I started putting it into practice, what I wrote down. And it was like, oh my God, all of this time, all I needed was a focus. All I needed was something to help point me in the right direction. All I needed was to figure out like, what is my motivating force? Because that's the world of difference between working for money or just for money and taking any
Yeah.
job just to be paid, or working because I'm passionate about this. And it created like tons of opportunities to make money. And
Hmm.
I'm happy. And I'm not having Monday blues about showing up to work. And I'm not complaining when I have to work an additional however long. And I'm not like, I'm actually happy. So for me, that makes the world of difference in a world where, so much people complain,
Yeah.
in a world where I meet so much people that are unhappy. Believe it or not, Dan, in the Bahamas, we meet like tourism is like our number one industry. So I
Hmm.
meet people from all over the world, from all walks of life. And in that moment when they're on vacation, they set aside their problems. And a lot of them say, you know what? and going on vacation. And so the most drinking happens, the most fun happens. They're the most open they are in their whole life on vacation. But guess what? When they get back home, they pick back up all those problems that they left so that they could focus on vacation. They pick them back up. And so a lot of times, we've developed, oh, I've developed friendships with some people who come on vacation. And if I were to travel to their state to visit them, they're a completely different person than they are on vacation.
Yeah.
So for all those listening, for you, you might say, you know what? That's true. Because I'm different when I'm on vacation. I'm determined to have a good time. I'm determined to go on tours, spend my money, get drunk, do whatever whatever it is. I'm determined to not think about what I left behind. So for me, I wanted to develop a system, a blueprint that I don't have to rest down and pick up. So if I'm at work, I'm good. I am happy to be here. When I'm on vacation, it's much needed rest. I'm good. I could keep it moving. So different situations that pop up, that crop up, I wouldn't have to change drastically, or so I'm moving more from a standard point of view based on my blueprint.
Right.
So it's like it works so well for me that I said, you know what? Maybe me helping other persons find their own blueprint and helping them to develop themselves will make the world a better place. Because imagine everyone walking around happy to be doing what they're doing, not really, we all wear masks, of course. Like the you that's in the privacy of your own home is different from the you that's at your workplace or at your church
Yeah.
or at your job or whatever. Like, you know what I mean? But this for me helps me to be more centered and be more real and genuine when I meet and greet people. So it's not so much me putting up a mask or a defense. Like who I am, it stems and flows from a natural place versus externally internal, like going from external internal or relying on, oh, well, this one was nice to me, so I'm nice to them. And this one was really nasty to me, so I'll be nasty to them. No, it's like I see you look hurt and, I make an internal decision. Okay, not my monkey, not my circus.
Yeah.
I'm not about to be sparked by this was coming to me because obviously I didn't have anything to do with this energy that's coming my way. So I choose not to feed that. It's a choice now instead of a reaction.
Yeah.
So all of this, like, I know this is a long answer to a short question, but it from stuck to unstoppable comes from a real place. Like I really felt stuck. I really didn't know what the heck I was doing. I didn't know where I was going. And to be in my 40s in that position was just pitiable. Like I was
Hmm.
beating myself up and saying, well, I should be here and I should be there. And then, they say comparison is the thief of joy. Well, I was
Yeah.
comparing myself. And it's natural for us to do that, to our peers and such. And, getting to this point, some people say maybe you went through a midlife crisis, but trauma does change you. Life
Yeah.
changes you. Like the death of family members, people who were close to you, changes in the world, all of those stuff wear on you. And it really does change your perspective. And for me, I use that to shift my mindset and to really move away from the victim mentality to say, oh, the world is doing this to me. Oh, this one did that to me. And be just walk around as a perpetual victim. Or if I decide to have a growth mindset, which is another thing that's in my book and what I've been teaching all of the youth leaders who are part of my program to really develop a growth mindset, to develop a instead of a fixed one. It's so weird. Like when you see children, they automatically have a growth mindset. They're curious
Yeah.
about everything. They want to know everything. They want to get into everything. And it's the adults that said, no, don't touch that. No, don't do that. Oh, mind your manners. Oh, you have to say hello to this one. Oh, you know what I mean? So we train them in the way that if you see an adult, I can guarantee you can see what type of household that person came from by the way that they're acting and behaving, because that's what's been groomed into you from a little kid. Those
Yeah.
formative years are really important.
Absolutely. It's great that you're kind of sharing your wisdom with the youth. Can I ask what age group you kind of coach and
So
mentor?
it's from 12 to like 15 for our youth environmental program. And
Hmm.
those who really show promise graduate onto our cadet program, which is more in-depth environmental knowledge. They have to be scuba certified.
Wow.
It's very intensive. It's very, very cool, this organization that I work with. And then afterwards, they go on to focus on different sections or different ecologies. Like we have this animal here that's a conch. It's called conch. If you've ever been to the Bahamas, conch is a staple over here.
Okay.
And so they learn about the biology of those important creatures to us. The whole goal of all of these youth programs is to encourage a stewardship in these students to realize that, hey, we're on this beautiful real estate, both on land, on water, and you have to take care of this. Sometimes, again, what's ingrained into us is, hey, we want to invite progress. We want to invite development, but we want sustainable development. We
Mhm.
want us to be as untouched as possible, but it's also to just balance it with progress. And so we need these students to be leaders so that eventually, if they end up in positions to make a decision on the environment, they would choose to protect it, choose to be sustainable about it.
Mhm.
That might be confusing, but in the past, in the Bahamas, we have a lot of folks that want to develop. Yeah. So they would maybe tear up a mangrove ecosystem or a pine ecosystem just to put up buildings. You know what I mean?
Right.
I
Yeah.
saw something on the internet. I don't know how true it is, but and said that some folks who were pioneering, sustainable development tore a road through a very important forest to create a connection, like to create a road to go to this environmental. They're building a building, so they tore a road through this forest, very important forest, to make it more accessible to people coming to an environmental. It was like, what the hell? Like, so you see why we need leaders? Like, we need
Yeah.
people to be responsible. So for us, that's that program. Back in the day too, I worked with our youth program at the church I attended. So that age group was again from maybe 10 to 17. I also go to, well, not just me, but me and my small team, we go to the schools and we talk about environmental leadership, all of the environmental stuff. We incorporated leadership into it. And because I've been with them for so long, I developed my own style. And this is where this book came from me working with them and seeing what worked. And then adults started coming to me and they're like, I wish I knew that at 15 or 16, and
Yeah.
maybe this will help me. So I go through some exercises when I'm invited to groups to help them pinpoint their values. And it's like eyes opening and they're like, God, okay. I didn't know that I valued this. Or or if they would say, I value family. And
Yeah.
one of the exercise is, if one of your values is family, now let's detect how you spend your time. Now, in a week, let's allot the hours that you spend to family. How much hours do you spend with your family? If it's that important, it should be a high amount of time that you're spending with family. Now, let's compare that. How much time do you spend on your phone? How much time do you spend watching Netflix? How much time do you spend surfing the internet? With that thumb, like some people develop problems with their thumb because they're scrolling so much, or
Yeah.
eyesight problems. All right.
Yeah.
So how much time if you value outdoors and hiking and nature, how much hours are you outdoors? So it's kind of a reality check. Sometimes in our mind, we want something, but in reality, that's not the case. So your actions always follow your thought process. So family is on your brain. Why aren't you spending time with your family? That means you're trying to, you want it to look good for me,
Yeah.
but don't impress me. You have to impress yourself. Like at the end of the day, you have to look in the mirror at yourself. And if you're not making any type of gains or making any type of progress or movement, I don't care. Not my monkey, not my circus. It's about you. Like if you're not making gains, then it made me responsible for my own life. And when I realized that and stopped blaming other folks for the shortcomings that I was experiencing and took full responsibility for myself, it was like, okay, maybe it's a slap on the wrist moment. Like it's tremendous freedom, because then I knew that no job, no person, no place, no thing, no whatever is responsible for how I feel. So,
Yeah.
however I react to certain things, it led me to say, okay, if I'm upset over this person, what is it about me or what unresolved issue do I have that I'm not dealing with?
Hmm.
And it led me to a lot of discoveries. Like sometimes people feel like, okay, once I get my values, once I read this book, everything will be fine. No, that's no, no,
Yeah.
no, no, no. That's just the start. It uncovers so much other stuff that you have to deal with. So, all right, now that I found my values, now that I found like where I'm spending my time, now that I found all of this different stuff, some other issues came about. I remember having a situation with this person that every time I see them, they just made my blood boil. I just was like, I do not like you. And that's just me being real. Like, and so I realized, what is it about this person that I don't like? What I didn't like was all of the things about myself I didn't like. So when I was able to let go of all the emotions of the situation and realize it's not the person I didn't like, it's how much their behavior reminds me of mine.
Right.
And when I came to terms with that behavior and make changes, which took me a while, and even when I didn't feel like it, I was like, you know what? I said to myself, it's not about you. It's not about that person. I don't dislike that person. It's this issue that I don't like about myself. I had a moment where it was so, I was so shaken and I was able to release all of that hidden enmity or strife that I was having with that person. In the space of, I want to say, 2, 3 days, that person started acting differently towards me. And it led me to solidify my mindset. It led me to solidify how I was thinking that, okay, what I give out, I get back.
Hmm.
That reciprocity, that law of attraction. I listen to people like Joe Dispenza and, um, like so many people online who say the same thing in different ways. They're all saying the same thing. Like the energy that you have, that you come with, is what you experience. And so through changing yourself and having a growth mindset and changing how you look at everything else, it changes. So that person ended up being really close to me. Like after I dealt with my hang up, I realized how, oh my God, you're a really good person. And so I started like rinsing and repeating, like, okay, I didn't like this situation. So let me see. And I started experimenting with myself. But to come full circle, it all just started when I created my own blueprint for myself. Like it all started from there. And the more I solidify that foundation, the sturdier I become when I start experimenting with different aspects of my life. But it all
Hmm.
started with getting my blueprint, like realizing what's important to me and focusing inward versus focusing outward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like that kind of realization and the way you put it, kind of coming up with this framework for you to work off is great. The unfortunate thing is that I feel like it's something that everyone has to realize on their own. A lot of people go through life and they reach a certain point in their life where they kind of realize these things and then they want to share that wisdom with the youth. And they will kind of, I mean, so some of the things that I was told when I was younger were like, enjoy like your teen years because these are the best years of your life.
Uh-huh.
And you're like, yeah, whatever. And you just kind of float through it. And then you hit your 20s and you realize, oh, those really were the best years of my life. I wish I kind of treasured those more. And you hear it from celebrities as well. Like one of the ones you hear all the time is money doesn't make you happy. Money doesn't create happiness. And everyone's like, yeah, right. That's easy for you to say on your mega yacht. But then, I mean, I haven't encountered it, but I was watching an interview with Dan Bilzerian the other day, and he encountered the best life that we can imagine. Right, he had all the money and all the girls and all the everything money could ever buy, and he got to a point where it was just so miserable. He had everything, and then there was nothing to kind of strive towards. But back to my point, I just kind of, unfortunately, I feel like it's something that you just kind of have to encounter yourself for you to fully learn that lesson. I mean, the fact that you work with kids is great. And I mean, we can try and share our wisdom with them and hope that it kind of sinks in. Because I was similar to you, right? So I never had any clear direction in my life. And I went through school, and around the age of 14 or 15, I think, is when they say now is the time you need to pick what you're going to study. So in the UK, it's called GCSEs. They say now you need to choose what you're going to study at GCSEs because that determines what you're going to study at A level, and then what you study at A level then determines what you're going to study at university, and what you study at university then determines what you're going to do as a career for the rest of your life. And I'm 14 years old, and I'm being told to make this life-changing decision. And and the things that we were learning at school were like history, English, maths, geography. Like it's not interesting to children. Whereas
Exactly.
I think it's a double-edged sword. So nowadays, you've obviously got all these kids with smartphones and social media, which does kind of show them that there is an alternative, and it has led to a lot of people being able to be podcasters or musicians. Or look yourself, you're a singer-songwriter. Podcasters, social media influencers, although I don't like that whole world, but it is a thing and people make money from it. They can make a living from it. I mean, people can really do anything, which is great. But on the other hand, the double-edged sword aspect of it is everyone tries to be that. So rather than trying to do something productive, they just kind of see these TikTok people, for example, and say, that looks easy, I'll just do that. And then it's as you were saying, they just kind of spend all their time scrolling through their phones and not actually doing anything productive, right?
Yeah. All right. Because I work with kids again, a lot of children, I come across the same situation. Everyone wants to be the influencer. Everyone wants to be seen, heard, and they want to rinse and repeat what they see other folks doing. So my thing is, if you're operating from an authentic place, your authentic self, you see social media and all that as a tool instead of trying to just do things for likes. Let's say you found what it is that you love to do. So now you can then use social media to shed a light on that versus trying to be exactly like this influencer, because they have to talk like this and they have to make everything exciting and they have to like this. You know, they have to do all this. They have to create that excitement. Maybe that's not you. Maybe you like woodwork. And so now you can use social media to showcase your love for this. Like, so a lot of times I feel like sometimes we forget that social media is a tool and you can't be used by the tool. We have to remember that all of these things are tools. Everything that's outside of you, you should utilize or see it more in the sense of a tool, respect it, realize what it's for, realize its function and its purpose. But if you're operating from your function and your purpose, it helps for you to know how to use those tools. Now at 14, 15, a lot of them don't really know what they want to do. Most don't know what they want to do at 14, 15. And that's where the beauty and mentors come in. Like maybe, back in the day, people apprenticeship in different areas and they'll be like, okay, I'm feeling this more, I'm feeling that more. But again, it all boils back to, if you know your values, if you spend the time to create a blueprint for yourself, then you will know or have a greater idea which direction you should move in versus trying to move in 10 directions. You'll narrow that down to 3. So now you can take your 3 and you can say, well, I've found a person in this direction. What they're doing, like it looks good from social media. What this one is doing, it might, don't look so good, but I want to check out different aspects of this direction. And now you reach out to those folks or find out as much information as you could. Because again, sometimes what people see on TV or on the screen, social media, it's all hype.
Yeah.
So now when you go and make a connection with these folks, something might resonate with you. You know what I mean? And in this process of values and the system that I created, like you're constantly refining, like everything is fluent, maybe it's the musician in me, maybe it's the creative in me, but nothing is static. Nothing is so solid. Like you're constantly growing. You're like a tree, if this branch breaks, it finds a way to compensate and grows in this direction. So I like to compare us with being this living, human, evolving being versus telling a 14-year-old, find out your direction and this is where you're going to go for the rest of your life. You know what I mean? It's so, and it works for some people. for the vast majority of folks, they need specialized care. Like, like I don't expect every student to go towards a career in geography, math, history. Some people might find that interesting. I didn't, and I felt like the creativity in me under these systems was very stifled. And so here I am, a creative person. I feel like I'm a connector naturally, meaning that I connect people, connect situations. I reach out. I call it took me 40 something years to realize that I'm a storyteller at heart. Like I love to tell stories. This is which makes it so much easier to work with children. So, you know what I mean? When I talk to them, it's like I'm telling a story and helping them to
Hmm.
see, you know, through allegory that I'm really talking to you. I'm talking to the spirit in you, and I'm speaking to that person. I'm speaking to this person in you to help you see the you, the Dan that you let sleep or the Dan that you forgot.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? And so I tell stories musically. I tell stories from the book, and it's all to help progress. And so I talk a lot. I like to just go off sometimes, but circle back around to the point that if you capture a teenager at a young age and you help them to find what they're good at and help them to figure that out once they go through that process and find a mentor, it helps to solidify that foundation and it helps them to grow even more to accept the next level of challenges that'll come because they always come,
Yeah.
which is pretty
Yeah.
cool.
I mean, that kind of transition stage from teenager to 20s is a really hard time, I think. I mean, by no means it's the hardest time in your life, but it's a shift from going from school into the real world where you suddenly have to work a well, you don't have to, but most people do work a 9 to 5, and you have to go and start paying rent or a mortgage, and you have to start paying bills, and suddenly you're not being cared for by your parents anymore, where everything's paid for and you're just fully supported. So I think mentoring at that age is a really beneficial tool because you can just kind of guide them through that. But I suppose there's kind of it's a fine line, right? So what I found is I so perhaps it's just personal ideology, but I believe in overcoming hardships, kind of encountering hardships and learning to get through that. That's what builds character, that will make you stronger, right? It's a very
Mhm.
stoic philosophy, and that's what I believe in. And I've seen, so I'm a parent, I've got young children, so obviously I know other people, whether it's friends or family, that also have young children, and
Mhm.
we have different kind of philosophies when it comes to raising them. So I like to allow my children to try things and then learn from their mistakes. And sometimes they'll fail and sometimes they'll hurt themselves. And I let them kind of learn that way. And I see others who are the complete opposite side of the spectrum where they like to be there all the time and just make sure that their child doesn't get hurt or doesn't get upset or anything like that. And, it's parenting styles. You can't really judge one way or the other, but that's what I mean when I say it's a fine line. Mentoring teenagers is great because you can guide them through that, but at
Yeah.
the same time, you want to give them enough space to kind of experience it and perhaps fail, right?
You have to give them enough space. Again, I'm working with students and I'll tell you how it is. Some of them come to us and I could tell the students that are bubble wrapped, that their
Yeah.
parents don't want them to get hurt or to experience pain and disappointment. And they come to us and they expect us to take on that role of coddling them or to be, oh, no, no, don't, are you okay? And I do it to an extent, but it's not my natural default. It's not something that I would do, but I'm not the person to say, oh, I'm going to teach. I'm going to give them a hard time so that they could realize that life is da, 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 da. No, I don't enforce my view on them, but my view is my view. So I had to tell a student one time, and sometimes I had to realize that filter between my brain and my mouth is kind of damaged sometimes. And so I'm telling him, like, bro, I'm not your mother. I'm not your father. I'm not cleaning up after you. I'm not reminding you of a thing. I need you to show up at this time. When we first meet up with students, we tell them like, this is an agreement between you and us. I didn't force you to be here. You wanted to come here because you say this is what you wanted to do. Now in life, I've experienced a lot of folks that say one thing and do an X, and it's a peeve of
Hmm.
mine. So I had to curb that in myself. So when I speak, I have to hold myself accountable. So now I'm in turn holding the thing that's in my reality accountable, because they expect me to operate at a certain level. They expect me to do this. I expect that from me. So now I have no expectation of you, but you say you want to be here. This is what's happening with or without you, you know? And so I'm meeting a whole generation of young men that want to be treated like princesses.
Yeah.
And I to the point where here's this young man, he's like young men. We have them outside and they're all looking outside as if, well, outside is only a place we go through to get to the car, to the house. It's not really a place. That's a real place that we should pay attention to. It's outside, you know? And so they don't want to put their hands in the soil. They're like, oh, are you going to get a glove? I could catch something. What? And I'm like sitting down like, okay, so you're not of the generation that drank from taps. You're not of the generation that, my parents, my siblings, older siblings would say, go outside, and I'd be outside all day. So I have to kind of fend for myself. They're not of that generation. They're of the generation where they would have to be inside and they would watch television all day. Right. And so now here's that type of person coming to us. And we have the other side where the parents have a more liberal attitude, like, okay, we'll be kind of hands off, but they're still present. And any issues or problems that they have, they would have to try and solve it themselves. And if they can't, then they would ask advice of the parents. Like, hey, I'm dealing with this or I'm dealing with that. And it leads them to be a little bit more independent. And through that independence, they create some really innovative ways of looking at life. And so I'm happy to talk to them because it's like, wow, I never thought of that. Wow, and they're teaching me as well as I'm teaching them. You know what I mean? And it's exciting to build with young people whose parents had a hands-off approach because they're like little adults, like, oh, you're 13 and you have a life plan. This young lady, she shocked me so much. Like her and her friends get together on a weekend and they put on like half PowerPoints, and different every week is a theme. And they're like, okay, these ones are gonna do a PowerPoint on the cute guys that they've come across. And I'm like, hey, no, I don't want to hear that. And the other ones they'd come across like interesting career paths that they saw and they think would be cool. And I'm like, at that age, you know what I was doing? Not that, and so you learn so much from them. They really keep me in the loop of what's going on. And it's a way for me to directly see how when you don't try to control a situation or control a child to tell them that they have to do this or they have to do that, like both of you end up growing from what they're able to discover through living their life. Like they pulled me in directions what I never thought I would be in, just through listening and just seeing what they have to offer. Now, for me, what I'm offering is a way for you to firm up your path, not for me to choose your path, for me to firm up your path. And we're talking about leadership. Well, how do you interpret that? Like, what would you like to do? Like, how would that make a difference in what you choose to do? So it's like very interactive and engaging, and it's really helpful to them to find their own path. It's very important for me that people find their own path, whatever it is, and be creative with it and grow with it, So long story. I like long stories.
It's so true though. Last year I read a book by Stefan Arnio called Hard Times Create Strong Men. And that's the philosophy that I wholeheartedly believe as well. But in this book, he was talking about this new generation, as you just spoke about, that comes in, doesn't know how to deal with anything. And the reason he theorizes that the reason behind it is because at the kind of end of the 20th century and then the turn into the beginning of the 21st century, that's when, well, there was certainly a rise in divorce rates. And what happens, 80% of the time there is that the children, like the mother gets custody, or at least the majority of custody. So I was privy to this as well. My parents divorced when I was 7 and my mother got full custody. So I was raised by a woman and I had no male role model at all. Like my dad died when I was young. And I everything that this guy was saying in this book just rang so true, that this entire generation, my generation, not everyone, obviously, but they're just kind of being, well, particularly men, are being raised by women and they don't know how to do certain things or how to act as a man in certain situations. And I managed to get through, the majority of my life. It was only when I was in my 30s that I encountered things that there was no one there to kind of protect me from or help me through. And I realized it's sad to say that in my 30s was the first time that I had to kind of step up and learn how to be a man. But yeah, as you say, it's a whole generation, and I mean, I think it's going to continue. But as the saying goes, it's hard times create strong men create good times create soft men create hard times. So hopefully, it is cyclical, and it will lead to future generations eventually being stronger men. We have to hope.
Yep, yep, yep. I remember going through the same thing. And my parents were together, so my dad was there. But again, I had older parents. I'm the youngest, so by the time as it got to me, they were tired. It's, 5 kids. They had to work hard. My dad was a hard worker. Till the day he died, he was a hard worker. They were married for 55 plus years. And when he passed, I had a lot of my friends come to me and they were like, "You don't know what you had. Like, your dad was present. He was there." And then I started looking at them, and the vast majority of them didn't have fathers in their life that was present, and they would automatically look to men in the community and just look up to them because, there's just someone to look up to. And I had it in my house, and I didn't realize what I had,
Yeah,
especially to the outsiders looking in. So he taught me some tough lessons. And I just thought, man, this man just being mean to me. No, he wasn't being mean. He was like, come, get outside. We have some stuff to do. And I was always the shadow, and I picked up skills that I didn't even know I had just by shadowing him. And just being in the presence of a man, some of that seeps in to you. Like all of that seeps into you without you even realizing it. And it's unfortunate that I would say the second phase of manhood, it didn't really click to me until in my later years. When I say second phase, like, yes, my first phase, I automatically had him there. I picked up on skills and all this different stuff, but I still didn't realize what a man was, you know?
yeah,
And I just didn't know because he was always working. So I was influenced heavily by my mom. So I had her way of thinking. And so here I am in the greater world operating from that standpoint. People can be animals out here, like people can be rough in the wider world. And so here I am with my nurturing self because I picked that up from my mom. And I'm being nurturing to people who abusing me or being nurturing to people who using me or being nurturing, you know what I mean? Thinking, let me help everyone outside of myself. So I'm putting my energy into making sure that this one is good, that one is good. And it's a very nurturing energy. But at certain points in a man's life, you don't need that type of energy. Like it has to be balanced. But I ended up overextending myself so much that I couldn't figure out like what the heck is going on. So I really had to take a stand. I remember finding this podcast on being a man. I can't remember the author, but they were like, men do things this way and men do things that way. And I had a group of friends of mine and we were like, we really need this because we don't have it, you know? And went through that and over time started building and I realized that one of the key points of being a man is know where I'm going, to to have a clear focus, to be firm in the path that I'm taking
yeah,
versus waffling off of my path. In my past, I've encountered a lot of women who, come in my sphere of influence and would be like, yeah, I like this, or I like a man that does this, or I like a man that does that. From these On Being a Man podcasts and stuff, they would say a man has a definite major purpose. And a definite major purpose isn't to chase women. It's to focus on the thing that makes you move forward. And women will be attracted to that. And
yeah,
they will come to you versus you running after them.
yeah,
And when I talk to some of my women friends and they're like, Be like a man that know where he's going. Like they challenge him, but they love a man that knows where he's going.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's crazy. We see it manifesting too. Like, all right, you drive with your wife or girlfriend, drive with her, and she's gonna challenge you in those directions. You know, you should where you going? You know, you're going. I know where I'm going. You know, and so I mean, I've experienced it, but all of these little incidences really just can't. I had to internalize and make it into a path that makes sense to me. Over the years, looking at my father's influence, I have some elderly gentlemen who influenced me as well. And I listened to their life and what they had to deal with in their time and just listen to the wisdom that's coming from them as people who've lived through the phase that I'm going through now and listen to these nuggets that come to pass. And I have to digest it and internalize that and make it into my own because I'm having a lot of young fellas now look up to me and they're like, I don't know where to go, or they're trying to pretend like they know what they're doing, and it's fine, you know. And so I would speak into their life once they ask for it, or they ask my advice. I don't give unsolicited advice.
Mm-hmm.
Once they are interested and they come to me, I say what I have to say and I back off, or I tell them my experience and I back off, or you know, once they're interested. And so that's been helping me. Mentorship, looking at men in the community who I admire, look up to, finding podcasts of men that you know went through something and progressing. All of this helps me to solidify my foundation because then I digest what you've told me, Dan. I digest your experiences, and it only helps me to make my blueprint stronger and better.
Mhm.
You know, so yeah.
Go back to what you were saying earlier, reminded me of perspective. So you said right at the top of the discussion, you were talking about how you live on this like glorious island where
Mhm.
a lot of tourists would say like, how can you be upset? You live in paradise.
Yeah.
But it's perspective, right? And
Yeah.
then the same as how you were just talking about, your friends would say you're so lucky because you've got an intact family unit, you've got
Yeah.
both parents,
Mhm.
and you don't realize it because it's just normal to you, right? So
Yeah.
it's all perspective. My scenario was both parents died when I was a teenager, and I was the only person who that happened to. So none of my friends experienced any deaths in the family, certainly not their parents. All their parents were still together. So like my teenage years were difficult, and that obviously continued into my 20s. And then there was a period, there was like a day in my 20s when I was talking to a friend about it, and I can't remember what specifically it was about, but I just said like, oh, you know, this is only made harder because, you know, I don't have parents to rely on. And he said, oh yeah, like I forgot that you don't have parents. And I was like, how can you forget that? And he said, oh, people just kind of forget because it's the norm to them is completely different to my normal. So
Yep.
I've gone through life without parents, and that's normal to me. So I can't imagine what it's like losing your job and having a safety net. I can't imagine what it's like in needing childcare and having someone there to be able to do it.
Yeah.
So like it's all perspective, right? Everyone's life is completely different depending on their scenarios.
Yeah. Like, and that's what makes life interesting, amazing, and also it gives me perspective. Like you realize that not everybody is like me. Not
Mm-hmm.
everybody has the advantages or the starting points or the situation as me. And so for me to sit down and complain like on the beach, as imagine, just imagine, I'm on the beach every Sunday with a fresh coconut that I picked from my tree. I'm sitting down on the beach with my two dogs, watching them run up and down. It's my own private beach. And so I'm sitting there just looking at the ocean, complaining, like, oh, my life is so hard. You know what I mean? I'm literally like, I'm going over situations in my head that was overwhelming, that's hard. And I'm paradoxically sitting on a private beach that's at the back of my property with my feet in the sand, with my dogs running up and down and complaining about how hard life is.
So
You see that?
so this is interesting because you're from this glorious island and the beach is just there all the time and always has been. It's second nature to you.
Yeah.
So other people from let's say the States, United States of America, that like Barbados is where they go for their vacation, right?
Uh-huh.
So, but because that is your normal, where do you go on vacation? Do you still go to hot, sunny beaches, or do
Oh
you want to go
no,
somewhere
I
different?
don't want to see a beach from my vacation. Like I would come where you are. Like I want to experience snow. I want to experience like. All right, I'll just give you the skinny on what happens. Like most Bahamians, we travel to shop because the amount of things that's available to us is limited on an island. So
Oh, okay.
most of us would travel to like the US because it's so close. My island is
Hmm.
like 15 minutes flight, like a 15-minute flight from the mainland US.
Wow.
And yeah, and so a lot of us jump on a flight and would spend an entire weekend shopping. Like imagine a place like Walmart.
Yeah.
So in the past, I went to school in the US. So I'd have to pick relatives up from the plane or the boat, and they would want to spend like from I pick them up until the place closed. They would want to spend hours in there. I've had a relative spend like 6, 7 hours in a Walmart, just walking around, looking at the shelves and just shopping. And it's so much stuff to do. So they spend hours. We're trying to study for finals. And here's this lady, she's just shopping and hasn't having a good old time. And God help us if it's a 24-hour Walmart, because then we wouldn't see them until the morning. I've had family members come over while I was in school, and we just, instead of finding a hotel or checking into a hotel, they'll be like, well, I'll just check in tomorrow, because sometimes the ferry boat gets in real late. Like it'll get in like after 10, and after you like clear immigration, customs, they wouldn't want to waste the night at a hotel. So they'll check in the following morning and use that whole night to just walk around Walmart shopping. So that would be a vacation for us, or to go to some place. For those that don't want to shop, they'll go to areas that they haven't experienced before. So you have a lot of
Mm.
persons from the Bahamas traveling to the UK. We're a Commonwealth country. So when you were talking about the GCEs or GCSEs or whatever, we also come up under that system. So
Okay.
we've had a lot of expat teachers, English teachers living on island that have been here for the whole, from we were singing God Save the Queen. So a lot of us would go to the UK, and they want to experience snow, ice skating. Yeah. I'll tell you an interesting story. We had my friend has a tour business, an electric bike tour business, and he had these young lads from the UK, and they had a great time. And through talking, they were like, well, they have a gap year. So then they explained to us what a gap year is. And we're like, you have a choice? Like, you can take a year off? And they're like, yeah, we're just traveling. We have about 2, 3 months to just travel. And I'm like, tell me more, And at night, there was some type of activity going on. And my friend met up with them, and he saw them, and they were all just looking up at the sky. And he was like, so what are y'all looking at? I'm like, oh, the sky is so clear. He's like, well, forgive me, but don't you have like the same stars in the UK? Like, what are you looking at? He said, yes, but you can actually see them here.
Yeah.
Like, it's no smog, it's no anything like that. He's like, oh, it's just the stars. He's like, yes, but look, like the sky looks like it's right there. I'm like, well, that's the same sky we look at every day. And he was like, well, you're blessed. You can see that. But in the city, life is completely different. Everybody is in a hustle and bustle. My life there is completely different than your life here. You're looking at that and saying, oh, what a great life you have. And I'm looking at your life and saying, oh, what a great life you have. And nobody's really living life. Just like comparing. You remember what I said about comparison being the thief of
Comparison.
joy?
Yeah.
Like, it's like that. So that's what we do for vacation. We go to places we've never been before, and it's definitely not a beach unless, well, no cases where it's a beach. I wouldn't go it unless it's a cruise, and then you're stopping at a cruise port and you come off. But most people in the Caribbean will not go to the beach.
No, that makes sense. I have a friend who's his girlfriend. So his girlfriend is originally from the Falkland Islands. So her parents still live there. And the population is only a few thousand. It's really small. And he said he went there once, and uh, they asked him to bring something really trivial to us, like bananas or something that they just can't get out there. And they were just blown away that he can just go to the local shop and get this thing. But it's as you say, like mainland is different from islands.
Yep, it's completely different. So we, again, like we would travel with a Bahamian family travel into the US in the summertime will typically take all of their children. Like everybody's going on vacation, not because you want them to enjoy it. And I hope, don't get slapped on the wrist for this. But when you travel back, because our import taxes are so high, we don't really produce a lot of stuff. So
Hmm.
when we bring in a lot of things, you get an exemption for each person, each
Oh,
child, each. And so you bring in like thousands of dollars worth of goods that we don't experience here, that we don't have here. We have to import. And so you get an exemption for each person that's coming with you. So all those children, exemption, exemption, and exemption. So if I travel with 6 children, that's at least about $1,200 or $1,500 exemption from some of the taxes. And so everyone gets to enjoy the joys of shopping. And you bring it over, like I
yeah.
think of what a gallon of milk is to you. Y'all have dairy farms. We don't.
Oh,
So
okay.
what would a gallon of milk cost for you? Whole milk.
I don't know how much a gallon is. We do it by liters, but I could get a liter for a couple of pounds, which would be dollars is only slightly higher than, let's say, like $3 for a liter. I don't know what that is in gallons.
So interesting story. I somehow, some way got a baby goat. Don't ask me how. I ended up with a baby goat. And he's a lot of work. And so I had to get, either goat milk or whole milk. So I bought a can of goat milk for almost $10.
Wow.
And 1 gallon of goat milk, or 1 gallon of whole milk costs me $8. And this little dude wants to eat every 3 hours. And so I have to have, and he would go through a gallon of milk in a day. And so I'm spending $8 after taxes, after VAT and all that stuff, $8 for 1 gallon of milk. So
That's
when
crazy.
something, so guess what ends up happening? I told you tourism is our industry, and people want to see the disparity, like what's island life like. Sometimes
Mm,
they romanticize. I would
yeah.
live on an island and I would take pictures every day. But we started taking some of them to the local supermarket. And they're in there like, oh my God, a box of cereal is like 14 bucks. Like, oh my God. Because comparatively, when they go to a store that they can just get up and walk to or drive to 2 minutes and they're there, they're like spending a buck and change or $2, $3 for something that we're spending 10, 11, 12, $13 on. So you learn quite quickly here what's a necessity and what's not,
Yeah.
And so that's why when we travel, we shop till we drop because all of the products and stuff is so much cheaper. And even to bring it in, I would still, win. I don't have to spend all of that money going to the store to buy something for 13 bucks,
Yeah.
and then it's even better if I can get all these children or a whole family to go and we get this big exemption. Then, 3, 4 trips a year, that's the vacation.
It is definitely an interesting disparity because, let's see, when I was a kid, we would go to Spain because, living in England, European holidays are like pretty common because it's so close. So we'd go to Spain on skiing holidays, and my dad, he owned a couple of bars in England. So when in Europe, the thing that most English people do in Europe is buy lots of cigarettes and alcohol because it's so cheap, and then just bring it back across the border. And I remember filling the car with so much alcohol, like we were literally sitting on it in the back of the car just to save money. But it's that comparison, isn't it? Like when you said the starry skies, it's the light pollution we've got here. That's the reason we can't see stars because there's so much light from all the street lights that you can see. You can see the moon, obviously, but you could see a dozen, 2 dozen stars. But like on my bucket list, something I really want to do in my life is go to well, wherever is really remote, but I've heard that the Grand Canyon's really good for
Seeing
stargazing because
stars.
there's just no light out there and you can see like the Milky Way and everything. I'd love to see that. Is that like common for you then to be able to see
Yeah,
that?
well, it's common for those that want to see it. Again, we're so used to it that we stop seeing it.
Mm.
So most people don't look up, especially with the advent of these cell phones and stuff. Most folks
Ah,
don't look up. So most
no.
like everyone's down and in their phone no matter what. And I don't know what caused me to start looking up. Maybe it was, during COVID when we were on a lockdown. And so everyone was just stuck in their own space. It led a lot of us to look up, to rediscover family time. Like we used to have like bonfires and roast corn on an open fire as a family. And, my parents and the elderly in the family would tell stories about how they lived. And so it wasn't just about seeing the stars, it was like rediscovering the here and now,
Yeah.
like listening to my dad talk about he was born in the 30s and he remembers seeing a plane for the first time, a
Mm.
seaplane. And he remembers that they didn't have cars or anything, so they rode everywhere on horseback. And so he
Wow.
remembers seeing this plane, and as a little boy, he thought it was a big bird. But what freaked him out was when the bird opened its mouth and people walked out. So he, as a little boy, jumped off his horse and started sprinting away like, hell no, not today. And his big brother had to stop him and he had to tell him, like, hey, that's called a plane because he's never seen a plane before, and stories like that. And then they told stories how his island was actually an outpost for the US military. So they had a
Ah.
missile base in our country on his island. And so here's all of these soldiers now coming in on these warships and they're using that as a base because at around that point in time was the Cuban Missile Crisis, and they were
Hmm.
aiming those missiles at Cuba. And so now his whole world changed with all of these people, all of these different colors, and so those soldiers changed everything because now months and months later, here's these little mixed children being born, on this island that's in the middle of, in the Bahamas. So it's these different things that we learn about when we get a time to be in a moment and we hear our ancestors' stories and they start telling us what their world looked like back then. To them,
Yeah.
it never was a case of being distracted because they didn't have phones, they didn't have lights. So they always saw the stars and they were able to navigate by the stars. When they go out in a boat and all that stuff, they're like, okay, align your boat here. And you
Hmm.
can, if you go this far, this is how you get to here or here or here. Whereas that talent has kind of been lost
Yeah.
unless you're studying how to run a boat or to be a boat captain, you know?
Yeah.
So it was a lot of things that got lost with the advent of technology and progress. Like all those lights, people stopped looking at the stars.
I mean, your islands must have changed a lot since over the past 100 years, for example, as you were talking about your father. Because as you say, like the predominant kind of income for your islands is from tourism, and presumably that started happening with, well, the evolution of the plane, for example. That's when people started flying over. Presumably before that, it would have been completely different way of life.
Yeah. The traditional way that our people had income was there was a thriving sponging community. So they dove for sponges and they used the sponges for a whole lot of different uses, like to wash and to
Mm.
clean stuff. And so it was a living creature that you used to create income. And even now we still have a little bit of sponging going on because they use sponges in certain computers and stuff. They use those little spongy parts. So they make a product from that. Before tourism, well, we kind of have a colorful past because, here's the English having this as a colony and, they
Yeah.
wanted to
Okay.
expel pirates and, the pirates kind of came to us. That's, you know,
Yeah.
our islands was where all the pirates came. So, we had to send that Governor General Woodes Rogers and him to come over here and his motto was expulsus piratus res commercia, get rid of these pirates, bring back commerce because they were kind of like intercepting all of the gold that's going. And so, yeah, we got that reputation. We also had the reputation in our past to be rum runners. So when there was that prohibition against alcohol in the States,
Mm.
yeah, we were running rum. So tourism really was a way for us to, clean up our act. And the vast majority of persons gravitated towards that industry.
Presumably, lockdown had a big impact because no one was coming to visit,
Yeah.
right?
Yep. It really did. During the lockdown, I would I would say that a lot of it disrupted this everything. You have persons who were living paycheck to paycheck, who
Mm.
now there's no paycheck. You had people who are not as blessed as some of us to have their own property. They're paying rent. So how do you continue to pay rent if you have no income? You know, it also opened up a lot of doors, and people, we started developing a different mindset. So now that you don't have this place to go to or all this stuff that's keeping you busy, you're forced to focus on you.
Mm.
So a lot of our people started like gardening again, growing their own food again, taking up hobbies, and hobbies was a thing of the past. Everyone was so busy, they didn't have time to develop a hobby, and so a lot of our folks started developing a lot more hobbies. Like I grateful and blessed that we are on our own plot of land that's ours. And so we just walked around and, just interact and engage with each other. So it was completely, it's never happened before in my lifetime. It's never happened before in my parents' lifetime. And it was crazy to not have the freedom to move around like you're accustomed to. But fishing, we're still able to fish because, like I said, the beach is at the back of my property. Still able to farm because you can do that. And it just opened up a lot of doors, alternatives. How could we be self-sufficient without relying on this? Because once that stops, then what do you do now? You know?
That's such a useful skill, farming and fishing, because
Yes.
here, as when we were talking earlier about the polar opposites, so obviously here, no one knows how to farm or fish. When lockdown happened and all the shops shut, it was like,
How do
how
you eat?
how is anyone going to eat? We don't know how to do anything. So if tourism is like the bread and butter for you guys, is that a typical like career path for most people? Like I'm going to open up a tourist shop or a tours. Like you said, your friend runs like tours on e-bikes. Is
Yeah.
that a common thing?
So I'll say this. I'll say that getting into tourism is like it's a big thing because it's easy access, a low threshold sometimes. Because out of high school, a high school person can find a job working some type of tourist business, either as being a tour guide or being a busboy or something in that field that's touched by tourism.
Hmm.
And I think in any environment, to be a business owner is like a person with a growth mindset. So if people here, a lot of folks here have a growth mindset. So we have a lot of smaller businesses coming up that want to serve the tourist market. Smaller businesses kind of prop up an economy, so it's encouraged. And then our second major field is banking. A
Oh,
lot
okay.
of banks have, offshore banks here, and
Mm.
a lot of people like to come to the Bahamas. And so it's banking is like the second. So between those two, we have a lot of folks in those areas. And tourism also touches so many different industries, like our fishing and
Yeah.
fisheries and stuff, because tourism money is in there as well. So we have tour guide operators that take people out fishing. We have tourists that want to come here to fish, all that different stuff as it relates to water. We have over 100,000 square miles of ocean, just, as well as we have more ocean than land, so that's also a part of the Bahamas. So it's pretty cool to watch it evolve.
Yeah.
Um, During that lockdown, just nobody was on the water, but we found different ways to compensate, and people started getting innovative ideas, and they started thinking of outside of the box. Though, how can I improve myself? how could I be self-sufficient? So I'm seeing a lot of that now. We're putting more importance on growing our own food because we import a lot of stuff because we don't grow it. And so it's important to know where your food is coming from. And
Yeah.
so that's been a major thing for us. So we've had a lot of folks now going into those areas. And I'm so happy because it's us diversifying our economy. It's us like I feel like without that having happened, I probably would have never sat still and come up with my blueprint. Like I felt like that would never have happened. So some blessing in the curse, some goodness out of, all that stuff that was happening. So we have a new generation of folks that's being sparked, and I'm happy about that.
Were you ever able to use your singing to kind of benefit from the tourist thing? Like, did you ever perform live in bars or anything?
Yes, yes, I will say that. Like I've been singing all my life, and I used to work with a band that did like top 40, a rock band, believe it or not, in the Bahamas. And we performed every month at a little dive-in spot. And so we'd get a lot of tourists come through, a lot of locals come through, and they get to hear, all of that type of music. In my band, some older fellas, I probably was one of the youngest fellas in there. So in their time, they want to play 80s rock. They want to play all of that stuff. And they being the youngest of five, I'm familiar with all of this music. So here we're doing the Beatles. We're doing like, I didn't want to attempt Dream On Aerosmith. No, just no. You do like, come on, flat top, recall, grooving up slowly to eat up. Juju eyeballs, he want holy roller, he got. Like, I love that. That's my type of
Classic.
music, and play that funky music, white boy. So we get all of that type of music. And of course, you're dealing with drunk people. So you have to get them
Yeah.
on that dance floor. Like they might come there like, oh, we want to hear this and we want to hear that. And by the time as they had a drink or two, it's like, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've played the bars. I played private events.
Do you still
Most,
perform now?
yeah, that's why I'm a little hoarse now because I just did a wedding for this couple
Oh,
from the UK. They came down and they did a beach wedding. We get a lot of those.
yeah.
And they want to hear island music and they want to drink and hear island music and drink more. And there's a common theme here about drinking. I don't know if I'd survive in a pub, but yeah, I'm a little hoarse because I ended up performing for a good while and I write a lot of music. I've actually written some stuff for my environmental side. So
Oh, cool.
um, I've really dove into music as a teaching tool. And so
Ah,
I've been using it to teach these students that I go to at schools and such. So I've been using that a lot. But I absolutely love music. I've been writing music for a long time. I started writing for Sync, which is music for TV and movies. I got a couple good placements. And now I'm actually releasing a song, like an EDM slash Junkanoo. Junkanoo is our Bohemian music, a mix, partnered with this guy out of Australia, Apple Juice Kid, and we created this EDM mix that's I think is pretty good. So we're releasing that next Sunday, and so it's I love technology because now I'm connected with people from all over the world. I'm able to represent my culture.
yeah.
I'm able to talk to you. This is like through a computer. People are more. Again, we're coming up with our technology game, and it's really cool to meet and greet people representing the Bahamas and what we do here to the world. So I'm loving it.
I watched a few of your videos actually, but the one that really stuck out was your cover of "Lose Control" by Teddy Swims.
Oh, I love that dude.
I love that song, and I love your version of it. Where was that recorded?
I recorded right here
Ah,
at a local
nice.
business. So what I do is another thing that I do is all of my friends' businesses. I tell them, well, I want to promote your business. So I go to them and I shoot footage at their place and they allow it. And I choose some of my favorite songs to do it, because again, going back to that conversation of external and internal and all that stuff, I don't sing just anything. I want to
Mm.
sing the songs that I really love that resonate with me. And Teddy Swims, Lose Control is one of them. Tennessee Whiskey is another one. Like I just love that type. That's more my voice type, you
Yeah.
know? And so I take it and I run with it. And so I'm doing something this Saturday. There's a pig roast that's happening at a place locally that's called Berkshire Bahamas Farms. It's a whole farm to table situation, which I endorse. And so he grows his own pigs. He's feeding them certain things that's all locally sourced, and
Yeah.
then farm to table situation. So I'm always an advocate for that. I'm always pushing my friends' businesses. And yeah, I wish I knew Teddy Swims.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love this song.
Yeah, that's so
You
good.
got me singing that in my head right now. Like something got a hold of me lately. No, I don't know myself anymore.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's really good.
you got me ready to sing now. If I didn't have a hoarse voice, I'd sing. We'd have a concert right now, bro.
All right, I'll distract you then. Was there like a defining moment in your journey where you were like, something has to change? Like I'm unhappy, and now is the point where I'm going to make a proactive change.
Yes, I remember it vividly. After operating by default almost all my life, I came to this moment maybe 2 years ago, I want to say. And it's been a series of gradual changes and a series of gradual things I've been saying to myself. But the most defining moment of that change happened to me about around the same time I was writing this book, which was last year summer. I remember it very vividly. I was staring at myself in the mirror and I was like, it's now or never. Either I am going to live my ideals or I will just keep floating along.
Yeah.
And floating along isn't helping me. I have to seriously commit to following through with all of the things that I say I'm going to do. And I remember saying that to myself. I remember being emotional about it because I was sick and tired of being sick and tired of being sick and tired. I just got to that point where I had it up to here. And it was either I move forward or I just let it go. Just that's and saying that's it. I didn't know what that meant by
Hmm.
saying that's it. But I just was up to here with disappointment in myself, not moving forward how I thought I should be moving forward, with being so vague and so formless.
Yeah.
And I just got tired, Dan. Like I just was tired. And I remember saying that to myself and saying that it's now or never. And so I made the choice to sit down and write out my thoughts in no particular order, just write it out. I took the time to sit still and say, okay, how do I organize this? And that's when I was inspired by those students. That's when I had my inspiration. And I started like just organizing my thoughts. And through organizing my thoughts and realizing that there's no going back for me, I found something. I found the inspiration to organize it and put it together. And each step led to a next step. Like there was no clear cut path with a 5 year plan ahead of me. It was only, I'm doing this, even if it failed, even if it messes up, I don't give a damn. Like it was so strong in me that I want to say other people started to see that and they started like, oh my God, like you changed so much. Like something's different about you. Maybe it was a resolution that enough is enough. So I came to that point where I couldn't make any more excuses for myself. What I was experiencing was what I was allowing to happen. Even though the dream looked huge and it looked like it was insurmountable, I did not care. I just got to that point where it's now or never.
Yeah.
And since then, it's been growing in me like there's no turning back. There's no turning back. There's no looking back. And like I say, as every time I make a step forward, different situations come to challenge my resolve. And I'm able to sit still and say, okay, what's my next move? There's no going back. There's no turning back. There's no longer being that person 5 years ago or 3 years ago or 2 years ago. And that's really been motivating me to move forward. I've seen myself progress through some challenges. Like you say, the challenges really make the man, or they make
Yeah.
you to have that firm resolve. And I've seen myself just walk through things that would have crippled me 4 or 5 years ago. And all of the situations that challenged me, like, helped me to grow so much. I never thought that I would be here talking to you about this stuff. I just never saw it. I never thought that I'd have a book. I never thought that I'd be the person who's presenting to all of these young people in schools. I never thought that I'd be the person that's presenting to adults and communities about getting to the bottom of your situation and creating your own blueprint. I never saw that. And the firm part in me remembers when I was waffling, operating by default, and I came to this decision. The firm part of me remembers that. And the firm part of me reminds myself, like, this is what you wanted. This is what you wanted, you know? And it's like, yeah, okay, I wanted that. Anytime I start to doubt myself, I was like, this is what you wanted. This is what you wanted, and it only gets better.
Yeah.
See, Don, I talk to myself a lot. In my book, I have these exercises where I would stare in a mirror. And at first I couldn't do that. I couldn't stare myself in the mirror. Like, it was just, I couldn't give myself eye contact. But over the years, I started doing it, and I'm able to have direct eye contact, and I'm talking to myself, and I'm saying to myself, like, you're not a victim. You're not, you are this. And, I have these mantras that I say to myself. And anytime situations get a little bit challenging or a little bit hard, I have to constantly remind myself, sometimes multiple times per day, that this is why you're here. You have this gift. This gift was placed into you for a reason. And even though it doesn't look like what you thought it would look like, you're going to keep it moving. You're going to keep it going. You have a solid foundation. You have your own blueprint. It's not somebody else's. And its success or its failure is dependent on what you're doing today, right now. So am I going to spend 2 hours and scroll on Instagram or TikTok and look for funny videos and laugh? No. Right now, I'm going to write an article that I'm going to make sure I get on my web page. Right now, I'm going to practice this song, or I'm going to write this song. And so that's what I've been doing. It just shocked me that I no longer watch TV.
Yeah. Same.
Because I used to watch TV a lot, and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden I just don't. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? I used to watch, they're like, oh, let me look for a movie to watch on Netflix, and now I just don't.
Yeah.
And so all of those hours that I was taking to time filler hours, I'm now time filling hours. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now I'm pumping into me, and each day it gets better and better. You know what I mean? So it's amazing to watch this chain reaction. It's amazing to watch my brand grow. It's amazing to connect with other folks who I'm watching your brand grow, and watching, like, the fulfillment of watching you pour into someone else's life actually is fueling yours. Like, that stuff is amazing. Like, you can't beat that.
No, you can't. And I can't believe it. What I realized is I notice now how many people are just kind of floating through life and not doing anything, because
Exactly.
I did it for 35 years. And back in lockdown, well, actually, no, I'd say before that. So when in terms of the podcast, like when I was a kid, I remember wanting to be a radio presenter, but I had no idea. Not just a radio presenter, I wanted to have my own radio show, but obviously I was a kid. I had no idea how any of it worked, how to get like your voice out there on the radio waves. And then you just kind of go through school and get a job and blah, blah, blah. But then it was during lockdown that I decided I wanted to try this podcasting thing. And I went and bought all of the equipment and learned how to use it all and everything. And I guested on a couple of podcasts, and I set everything up, and I got my website and the email domain and everything. I spent months setting this thing up until it came to the point where it was time to start recording, and I just didn't take that final step because you're full of self-doubt. You're like, oh, what if it doesn't work, or what if no one cares, or what if I get judged for it, for example. So I put a pin in it, and then it was last year I decided I had this like life-changing thing where I was like, it's now or never, exactly as you say. It's now or never, because I've gone 35 years of just kind of doing what everyone else
Floating.
does and not doing the thing that I really want to do, not taking that risk. And so there's two options. I'm either going to risk it and try it, and then I can look, if it fails, then I'll look back and say, I tried and it failed, and it doesn't matter because I tried. There was something I heard. I listened to a lot of inspirational, motivational speakers, and there was one I heard today where they said, the pain of failing at something is nowhere near as bad
You're
as
not,
the pain of not
not doing
trying.
that at all.
Yeah. The pain of regret of not trying that thing. But so yeah, I'm doing it now, and I'm loving it. And like I'm similar to you. Like I I don't watch TV anymore. I don't play video games anymore. I don't go on my phone. I've never had any social media, so that's not a big thing. But I don't do any of that stuff anymore. And it wasn't like a conscious decision. It's just that I'm filling my time doing productive things. So
Yes.
I've said it before on the podcast, so people get bored of me saying it eventually. But I wake up at 5 a.m. and I do
Same.
like full body. It's the
Same.
way forward.
Yeah.
But I do full body stretches. I go for walks. I get 10,000 steps. I go to the gym every day. I do cold showers. I work on this. I spend a lot
Oh,
of time working on this. And I remember I was talking to, well, this happened a few times. I've been talking to friends about things that we're getting up to, and they ask me about TV shows, like what are you watching at the moment, or video games, what are you playing at the moment, and I'm like, nothing. I just don't do it anymore, and they just can't understand that. And I take my
perspective.
kids to school, and I see these people who have just gotten out of bed, like it's 8:30 in the morning, and they're still in their pajamas and dressing gowns, and they walk over the road to drop their kids off, and I'm just looking at them like, I never noticed before how many people are just kind of coasting through life, and they don't have any drive, any ambition.
Yep.
And I look at myself now compared to a year ago, literally, I feel like a different person.
Complete.
Yeah.
Yeah. I could endorse that. We have a lot in common. Like I'm up at 5 every morning. One of my goals when I first started exercising was walking 10,000 steps a day. So I got this Apple Watch and I'm like, which is just telling, it's been telling me to stand up for a long time, but I'll make up for that, you know. But I get 10,000 steps or more a day. Now, doing competitions for fitness with people also with these Fitbits. I'm now, like I said, I'm no longer into time wasting activities. It's crazy to know that a lot of folks around us, they are coasting. But again, it's not my issue, not my problem, because I'm focused on what I'm doing. And it just shows me my progress when I see that in my experience. Like this one is still in there, like nightgown at 8 a.m. I've had 3 or 4 hours to get
Yeah.
stuff done. And I
Yeah.
feel like I'm only now awake after doing that stuff, and musicians, singers tend to have late nights. And I still have late nights sometimes. But if it's not 9, 10 o'clock, I'm in my bed, or I'm busy recording music or doing something else. It's one more thing I'll tell you. My dad had this saying, and it really helped me to move forward. It's pretty crass sometimes when I think about it. But I was on the radio, on a radio show, and all of my guests, they kept saying, well, what if this happens? And what if that happens? And what if? So my dad had this saying, he said, what if my aunt had a male genitalia, then she would have been my uncle.
Yeah.
And when you really think about it, like everyone, every time I say it, they stop and they're like, and I'm like, yeah, it's pretty crass, but it gets you to get out of that mindset of what if and what could go wrong and realize how absurd we are focusing on everything that could go wrong versus focusing on what could go right. And so just shocking people out of that momentum forces them to take the step even while being afraid, to take that step even while figuring that everything could go wrong. Because chances are things could go right. Like it's maybe a 50-50 chance. It's a 30-70 chance. It's a 60-40 chance. But if we focus on all our efforts on what could go wrong and you make not one step forward, it's 100% chance of nothing happening.
Yeah.
So that always is a sobering moment for me. So anytime I find myself in a situation where I'm asking, well, what if this happens? And what if this happens? I remind myself of what my dad said, and it caused me to chuckle out of that situation. And nowadays you can't really say that because so many changes and people you don't know what's going on. Sometimes common courtesy on an island is us saying to you, yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am, and to
That's
watch
dangerous now.
people, yeah, to watch people like, oh, you're assuming that I didn't assume anything. I don't know. I'm only going by what I see. Like, don't beat me up for it. So it just leads me to put things in perspective for myself. Instead of focusing on what's wrong, we focus on what's right and we get better. You know?
One thing, a story I heard once, I can't even remember where I heard it, but there was this student who had gone through college, university, and done what they needed to do. And they were at this fork in the road. They wanted to be a doctor, so they needed to go to medical school. And they went to their parents and said, I want to do this, but it requires 10 years extra study at medical school, and it's going to cost a lot of money. And they were told, 10 years from now, you're going to be here. You can either be a doctor or just go away and do something else. Like, regardless of which path you choose, you're going to end up here again. You're not going to vanish. You're still going to be here in 10 years' time. In 10 years' time, you could either be the person you want to be, put the work in now and become that person, or give up before you even try.
Exactly.
And in 10 years, you're going to look back and regret it. And I remind myself of that occasionally.
Yeah, when I find myself saying, oh, I wish I did this in the past, it's like, no, we doing it now. Sometimes I forget. So I have to write it down. And I'm like, I don't care what's happening. I'm crossing this off my list. I'm just getting it done before I overthink it. And that's been working for me. Again, I can't stress enough how much it's not just me pushing a book. It's me saying my blueprint works for me. And if I didn't have it, I'd be so lost. Because a lot of people walking around here like NPCs, they're part of the system. They're pushing an agenda that they don't even know anything about. Like, they just operating by default. When they open their mouth, someone else's voice comes out.
Yeah.
And they don't even know it. And so when you tell your dreams to an NPC, they're going to repeat back to you what they've been trained all their life because they don't see anything wrong with that. So if you were to tell an NPC, hey, I want to start this podcast, oh, well, so much could go wrong. Like, oh, well, most people don't be heard. Like, they start speaking your doubts.
Yeah.
And so I had to stop myself a few times and be like, you know what? You're not the person to talk to. You have to talk to someone who woke up to what real life is. And real life is understanding why you're here, the purpose that you want to focus on, and surrounding yourself with people who are going to speak to that purpose versus trying to tell me everything that could go wrong. I doubt myself enough. I don't need you doubting me as well. I don't need you to add fuel on my fire to tell me why I can't do something. The whole world tells me that every day. So to surround myself with people like you, Dan, who, damn, we have a lot in common. Like, you're also of a tribe. You also don't watch TV. So iron sharpens iron, and it makes what we're doing so much more important and flowing forward. And you end up being emboldened into the thing that you're talking about, the thing that you focus on, so that we meet more folks like us and keep this moving and keep this momentum going. Because we have something to say, something that's in us wants to be expressed. And that's our creative spirit. That's the creative part of ourselves that needs to be expressed. Because the world and these NPCs and all of these people, all they're doing is trying to quiet that. And when good people do nothing, evil flourishes. So you see all of these people that's walking around here like robots. That's the real apocalypse. They're walking around here, robots in their phones, and you had a conversations. Oh, did you see what such and such a character said on the show? And I'm like, y'all for real? You're talking about, like, they're having such an emotional discussion about a fictional character on a fictional show that's causing them to have arguments. And when you think about the time that they're spending talking about this stuff, it's blocks of time that they're talking about it, tweeting about it, fixating on it, and life passing by. Life is just passing by.
Yeah.
And you're not focusing on, how am I going to feed myself? hey, this dream that I had, how am I going to fuel that? You're robbing your dream, focusing on something that's not serving you. So each day that goes by, I look at the experience that's robbing my dreams or that's trying to rob my dreams or people that come to speak in my atmosphere that's attempting to take away some sort of action, even if it's myself. I watch the words that are coming out of my mouth because that's also fueling my dreams or taking away from it, and the more I move in silence and the more I just do it, even if I'm tired, just do it. Like some days I wake up, I don't want to exercise.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Sometimes I wake up, I'm like, oh, I had a tough day yesterday. Let me just take this morning off. No. So I have a person who's helping me focus on the areas that I'm weak in. He's a personal trainer. And so we talk just like how me and you were talking. And so if you don't see that I exercise by a certain time, this dude is calling me. It's like, why are you being lazy today? I'm like, you know what I mean? Like stuff like that.
One of the things that's always spoken about in the motivational space is how you need to distance yourself from people that are bad for you, and you need to surround yourself with people who are like-minded. And it's something that I've always battled with, and I've never taken the plunge. I've met people such as yourself while doing this podcast, where we're on the same wavelength. We agree on all the same topics, and we're on this personal development journey, and it's great. And then there's you're so right when you said that everyone else is just NPCs who just regurgitate what they've heard elsewhere. I deliberately haven't told anyone in my personal life about this podcast because I don't want that. I know what the comments are going to be, and I don't want it. So I tested the waters last week. I was hanging out with some friends, and I quoted that book that I mentioned earlier. I said, "Hard times create strong men." And that's a quote that I've said on this podcast to different people, and everyone has heard it before and they've agreed with it. And then we've had a great discussion about the kind of philosophy behind it. I said it to my friends last week, and instantly I was told that it's a Joe Rogan quote, which it's not. But then because it was associated with Joe Rogan, I was instantly called right wing and an incel and just all these kind of terms to just kind of shoot you down. And I was just like, wow, that's like a really interesting philosophy that I believe in that's just been completely dismissed by these kind of little jabs. But that was interesting. Yeah, it's just so true what you say that like steel sharpens steel. We need to surround ourselves with like-minded people, because if you look at the really successful people, they're hanging out with the other successful people.
And it's the reason
That
There's a reason for that. And you will find, like, I had the same issue as you. Like, in an effort to feel valued, I was reaching out and helping all of these folks around me. And it wasn't much reciprocity. And so as I got to know myself, I started operating differently. And I had a hard time. I'm like, well, I don't want to cut myself off from this one, and I don't want to do that. And I didn't have to do that. I kept on, as I keep on this journey, and meeting people who resonate in the same way that I do, those folks cut off themselves. And like, it just comes to a point where the energies just don't combine. And my hardest thing was actually trying to say no. In my head, I'm creating all of these scenarios where I'm saying, no, I can't hang with you. I can't do this. These people fall away on their own. As simple as saying to myself, you know what? I want people who resonate with me to flow to me, and everyone else just fall by the wayside. I said that. And one by one, these folks who I had doubts about, even some people who I had higher expectations of, they fell by the wayside because their intentions weren't on the same level as mine. You know what I mean? And so I watched my life get freer. And in certain cases, some people who are very important to me, it shocked me, like, oh my God, I thought you were on my team, but they fell off. And so it led me to a lot of little mini lessons, like when folks would allow people to move how they want to move without my control, without me trying to seed them, without me trying to keep them in my life. Because the stressful situations that I experienced was me trying to hold on to people that didn't want to be held on to. And as I let go of all of that stuff in my existence, I'm watching my life get smoother. Still challenges, but they all come up to help me to be better. Like any tree that's growing has to go through a tumultuous process. Like think about the growth process. A tree has to break through the soil. A tree has to, like if there are other trees around it, fight for sunlight time
Yeah.
as it unfolds. And I kind of compare us to those trees that's growing, that's reaching for the water. Roots have to get deep enough to be watered. The sun, the petals have to unfurl to capture that sunlight, photosynthesize. And in a lot of cases, the weeds that are around that tree kind of pull away from its potential. But when you turn around and focus on you, when you focus on that thing that's in you, that dream, that goal, you're kind of pushing the weeds away and allowing yourself to grow. And as you grow, you notice that the weeds get smaller and smaller. And so the people in your life who I compare to weeds, once they no longer have a control, or once they're no longer connected to you, they can't suck that energy, that potential that you need to grow.
Yeah.
So eventually they fall by. They might say things like, "Oh, you've changed." I'm like, "Yes, I have." That's the nature of reality. Things change. The seasons change, but you don't complain about that. You don't say, "Winter, you changed. You became spring." It's a natural progress. For life to continue, there has to be change. There has to be growth. And growth could be painful.
What you just said reminded me of, it was either LeBron James or Kobe Bryant, one of them, who said that when they were putting in the hours to become one of the greats,
Mhm.
everyone around them was saying, why are you spending so much time practicing? Why are you getting so obsessed? Why do you never hang out with us anymore?
Yeah.
And it's just like people trying to drag you down when you're trying to become something better. And look what happens if you stick with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Those same ones that say that, they're going to be the same ones that say, "I always knew you could do it."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I saw this quote where they say, "Hustle hard enough that your haters come and ask you for a job." you know? And I laugh at it. We find it funny, but it's the truth. Like persons will come to you and they will say, "You still doing that singing thing?" Or you still, they belittle your dreams and your goal. Not obviously, but it's in the words that they use.
Yeah.
Like, why should my dream be little? What about me is little? What about my dreams is little? In your eyes, you see it as little because you can't see my vision, and without vision, where are you going? Without having a clear path forward, without knowing that this is the goal that you're aiming for, how can you get there? But
Yeah.
persons will come and they'll be like, "Hey, let's hang out or let's do this." Some of the things that you did in the past.
Yeah.
But if it's going to take away some of the fuel from your purpose, obviously you'll be like, "No, man, I'm doing this." And if they are worth their salt, if they are people who believe in your dreams or fuel it, they will be like, "Okay, I'll catch you another time. Or what could I do to help you?" And I found that in my world, if I had 10 people that I was constantly around, and after making that statement that, you know what, those that ain't may know well, those that are not helping to fuel this vision fall by the wayside. And about maybe six did. And the remaining four, so you know what they said when they realized the change in me? They say, "I see you changing. I like it. Because I always saw better for you than you saw for yourself. And how can I help you?" And then I'd be like, "Well, I don't know, but if you want, let's get together and have a brainstorm session. Let's discuss the way forward." And so we started bouncing ideas off of each other. Instead of talking with people or talking with situations or chasing this or chasing that, we started bouncing ideas. "Hey, what are you
Mhm.
doing?" And so now I have these dudes, these guys holding me accountable for the things that I said that I'm going to do. And
Yeah.
so one particular came to me and was like, "It's 6 o'clock. You up?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm up. I was up from 5." He's like, "Okay, good. Because you used to wake up at 10 and 11 and that's not productive." I'm like, "Oh, okay." And then the next one messaged me and he say, "Hey, you said you were going to get this done by this time. What's the progress?" "Oh, I got that done." He's like, "Okay, that's fine. What you moving on to?" And so, "Oh, I'm going to do this." He's like, "And what time frame?" "Oh, this is supposed to be a turnaround. Okay, I'll check back with you to make sure you do it." I'm like,
Nice.
"Okay," because I do that with them. And so now I have all of these people that's holding me accountable for the words that's coming out of my mouth. And if I can't produce, I have to have a damn good reason why that's not the case. And guess
Hmm.
what? These same people, they're going to be the same ones to hold me accountable. And they're going to be like, "Well, you said it. I didn't say it. So why isn't it done?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, because I had to do this. And I say, oh, sounds like excuses to me. So instead of making excuses, if you can't make it happen, then that's okay. Still schedule it, still do it, change the time, tweak it, but make it work for you. I'm holding you
Yeah.
to that. This is what you said. And so I've been doing that for months and it's been working, you know? So when I schedule out my week, if I can't make something because something legit happens, because things happen,
Yeah.
then I reschedule it to make sure that I do it. And I've been finding that I've been hitting my goals. Even if it's off by a day or two, I still hit it. Even though
Nice.
I might have a lot of challenges and situations that crop up and happen, I still do it. And I've been seeing my career advance. Even though I'm like paying for certain services or doing stuff like that, I'm happy I'm doing it because it's forcing me to, I have a reason to wake up at 5 in the morning and get stuff done. I have no excuses,
Hmm.
you know? And so that's been the mentality that's been growing in me since I made that decision to just do it. That's been the mentality that's been like, now it's strong. When I first started, it was just tentative moving forward. I don't know if I don't know if people would like the song that I'm releasing. I don't know if this and I don't know if that. And now I'm to the point where whether you like it or not, it's being released. Like,
Yeah.
not everybody will like what you're doing, and that's okay. I still moving forward though.
Yeah.
Thanks for your
Do it for
support.
you.
So yeah, do it for me. That's exactly what it is.
I just got a couple of questions that I like to ask everyone before we wrap up. So, what's a habit that you've developed that has had the most positive impact on your life?
Okay. Like I told you before, I have this habit of talking to myself and not feeling weird about it.
Hmm.
So that has had a direct impact on my life when I stopped thinking that I was crazy. So I talked to myself and I reinforced, okay, what am I doing today? And I would go over my list of things that I'm doing and I would talk myself into having a good mood. And I would talk, so that's a great habit that I've developed, talking to myself, because through that, I become clear on so much things, on the path forward, on
Hmm.
my next moves, in scheduling, creating that habit. So when I feel lazy and don't want to wake up at 5, here's me talking to myself. Boy, you better get up. You better get up because you're going to regret it if you don't do it. And then you're going to hear these guys talking crap and smart to you. So just get up and don't be lying to yourself about certain situations because you know what the truth is. You can lie to everybody else, but you can't lie to yourself. So I have these
Yeah.
conversations with myself, and it's been very helpful and impactful for my progress.
Nice.
Yeah.
And if you could meet one person, dead or alive, who would it be?
Wow. Okay. If I could meet one person, now you got me. Because now my mind is running, 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 running. Okay. Who was impactful? The most impactful person to me? I'd like to meet Bob Marley because being in the music field, he's had a tremendous inspiration and impact on my life.
Hmm.
And I want to get in his mind to see where he was at, like the situations that he was challenged with, like
Yeah.
what made him keep moving forward, regardless of the times that he was going through. So I would want to be a fly on the wall for a couple months just to see how he acted and behaved and what caused him to want to keep moving forward, regardless of all the challenges that he had. Like,
Yeah.
for me, that's one person who I would love to meet.
Nice. Okay. So, where can people find your work? So, you mentioned your book. What's that called again?
So my book is From Stuck to Unstoppable. It's on Amazon. Yeah, I just like that. The low plant growing from the head, it denotes the growth mindset. And when I saw this,
Perfect.
I was like, that's definitely me. So it's on Amazon. You also can find it on my website, which is www.javanhunt.com. I'm on all social platforms. Well, not X, but I'm on Instagram, Twitter, and Javan Hunt Music. So if you search it, you'll be able to find me. And on YouTube as well, Javan Hunt Music.
Yeah,
Yes,
I
sir.
definitely recommend people to check out that Teddy Swims cover on YouTube.
Woohoo! Yeah. Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Brilliant. Well, thanks very much for your time, Javan. I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, Dan, I really enjoyed it. And you have to stay in touch. I have you on my social platforms as well. And I'll definitely stay in touch and not only, continue to watch your episodes and watch your evolution, But through you doing what you do, you inspire me to keep doing what I do.
Mhm.
And it's like I told you before, it's iron sharpening iron.
Yeah.
And even though we're not in the same space, it's commendable for me to watch you progress and grow. You know what I mean? So stay in contact, man.